My time with Ender Lillies is what I would call bittersweet. This game gave me a lot of things to love and a lot of things to not love. It made me want more, didn't make me want less. There was so much I could do, but did I really want to do it? That's the conflicting feeling I have after finishing Ender Lillies, Quaytest of the Nights, if that's how you say the word. As I continued to go through this beautiful yet horrifying world, I continued to wonder just how much of it I was enjoying. Going from location to location, finding notes and reading about the people and characters of this world, as well as the amazing cinematics after each boss fight. Then there was combat, which wasn't bad, but I'm not the biggest fan of. You collect spirits by defeating enemies like this is the weirdest Pokemon fan game. And you loot so many corpses like this is the most colorful post-apocalyptic game ever, when in reality it actually is. All of this compounds to make a game that I'm very conflicted on, but one that I will still recommend, even hesitantly. And I think that's as far as I can go without going into spoilers. Spoiler tag is now up, anyone who hasn't played the game should play it before watching this video. The game starts with a beautiful cinematic of a spirit waking Lily, the girl that you play as, from her sleep. This is the Umbral Knight, the first spirit you will obtain in the person who becomes something of a commentator for the rest of the game. Lily is a white priestess, a female with the power to purify those who have been affected with the Blight. It's not sure if you have to kill those who are afflicted, because every boss in the game is killed when you do so, by turning into stone, or if you can purify them without killing them. From here you'll learn to attack and dodge. The first area of this game is very short because you'll quickly be coming up to the game's first boss, which is a good place to put things on hold and talk about exploration. I can find an equal amount of things to like and dislike in exploration, so let's start with the good because those are the easiest things to talk about. This game has to be one of the most beautiful Metrovanias I've ever played. The backgrounds of each area gives depth to each location. I wonder if some of these exotic locations in the game were changed due to the Blight. By the way, the Blight is actually like the undead curse or the infection if you play Hollow Knight and Dark Souls. Or I wonder if these lands originally looked like this and were instead enhanced because of the Blight. Let's talk more about the setting. It's called Land's Edge and it's quite the interesting place. And the Blight itself comes from something called the Reign of Death. You get the chance to learn much about this world and its people through notes, letters, and records you find all around the game's world, which ends up paying off in the long run, seeing parts of a story by collecting notes all around a location and then seeing that story conclude somewhere else. Whether it was the Battle of the Twin Spires, notes being passed between loved ones from different parts of the kingdom, learning about the different groups and factions that all lived here, my favorites were reading a story before seeing more of it with the boss that it was connected to. When you start seeing the enemies and realize that they're the people who actually lived here, it adds an extra layer of tragedy to this world. One thing that added to that atmosphere was how every single level had a different twist on gameplay. The church in the beginning is your standard tutorial level. The desolate town has tons of homes with layers that go above and below the main layer of the map. The witch's hamlet has lots of destroyed structures which makes for tighter platforming. The enemies here also work the exact same way. The catacombs has large open spaces filled with enemies that come from all sides. It also has tons of secret rooms with enemies waiting to ambush you. The dungeon has probably some of the most dangerous enemies in the game, some that can teleport, some that spew out poison, and some that even move a lot faster than others. Especially the dogs, which I have to say are my least favorite dogs in any game because of how fast they are. The castle would lock you in rooms with enemies that were guarding secrets. This is also where there are the most shielded enemies in the entire game, with regular knights then stronger medium-sized ones into the large Dark Souls knights. The Twin Spires were more of a vertical maze, which has you lifting elevators in order to get under them and then scaling parts outside. And besides the dungeon, I would say that this area also has some of the most dangerous enemies, with most of them having area of effect abilities. The last location just has a bunch of poison clouds around that damage you as you move through them, which is so severe that they have to give you a relic just so you can survive it. The amount of areas may be low, but Ender Lillies still has much to provide, so much that it may seem overwhelming at first. You get introduced to the first boss rather quickly within the game, and then after that there are two different paths you have to take, going through either the town or the witch's hamlet. Both of these locations have their own set of enemies, even though some of them are recycled, like these archers and these slugs. And at the end of each location after you beat the boss you get an upgrade. The way that this game does upgrades is very split. The double jump, dash, and ground slam all help in combat, while the grappling hook, wall climb, and the ability to swim are only for reaching new areas with treasures hidden away, but that's my problem. The problem comes from how upgrades are handled when it comes to finding secrets and rewards. These rewards range from things that increase your health and relic slot increases, currencies to upgrade your spirits, relics themselves, and those lore notes we were talking about. These will be hidden away in levels, and of course most of them need upgrades to get to them, but the key word here is most. Nearly 90% of these secrets can only be reached via these upgrades. Some of you may be thinking that's the point of Metrovanias, and you're right. But the problem I have is that it feels like most of these levels are gated away until you come back with the upgrade, and I don't mean going through any secret paths, those were fine. Think about it like this. You wake up and you get ready to go to school. You see that your book bag is actually locked within a safe. So you go to school and your teacher gives you the code to the safe. They tell you to go back home and to get the bag. However, when you open the safe, the bag is empty. So you go back to the teacher and they send you to another teacher who gives you another code to a different safe in your own house. So you have to go all the way back home and unlock the second safe, and you only find a single pencil. Then it's back to school and the second teacher sends you to a third teacher and they tell you to... Do you see what I'm getting at here? Some of you may still be telling me that that's how Metroidvanias work, but the problem isn't that these secrets require an upgrade, it's that it's being shown to me and I'm told I can't get it. Like I'm standing right in front of it and I'm told I can't pick it up. Think about how games like Hollow Knight and Blue Fire solved this. Parts of the area would be blacked out and you would have to walk past a wall in order to get to a certain area that you couldn't see from the outside. Ender Lillies does this, but it uses them very sparingly. It also made it a bitch when I was trying to go around and find everything within a certain room. I would check every single corner and crevice and there would be absolutely nothing, only to realize that the item I need is high above my head and I don't have the upgrade in order to get it. I also think that Ender Lillies is missing two things that contribute to this issue. The first is a shop. There are no shops in the game, so all of the items that you could potentially buy are instead scattered throughout the entire world. Which could be cool, but like I said, the upgrade system kinda ruins it, because it promotes this weird system of backtracking that never feels fun. The second thing that is missing is a bunch of side quests. This is both good and bad. It's good for the atmosphere, but bad for the exploration. Because once again, all of the potential rewards that you could have gotten from these side quests are instead scattered throughout the world. But then that made me realize that there are no other characters in this game, which means that Lily is probably the only living person in this entire world, which is an accomplishment that I didn't even think was possible in a game like this. Outside of that fact, I wonder if this was the developer's intentions. If so, I don't know if they succeeded. I mean, they did, but it still doesn't feel right. They tried something and it worked, however the game feels boring because of it. Due to this, I never had anything to look forward to. It was just the next area, into the next boss, with the next upgrade, and it meant the next trip back through the whole map checking every room for secrets. And it becomes frustrating because you'll still leave rooms unfinished if you don't have every upgrade to get every secret in a room. You'll look around frantically until you realize, oh, I need a bashing ability to get here. Oh, I need a wall jump to scale this. Oh, I need a key to get in here. This is Ender Lillies' biggest problem as far as I'm concerned. I can't go more in depth with exploration without talking about combat, so let's start. The Umbral Knight is one of the many spirits that the player will use throughout the entire game. He's more like a default one because Lily is a child. All other spirits either have unlimited uses or a set number. The places where you rest is where you'll also be able to refill the charges as well as upgrade them. And I like how the upgrades are handled for the spirits. They not only just enhance damage, but also things like attack speed and distance, as well as the duration of most moves. However, I found most of the spirits to be kinda useless, especially most of the ones that you find in the later half of the game. I say that the first 6 or 7 that you get will be the ones that you use for the rest of the game. This is because most of the later ones don't feel that applicable in combat like this. And considering that upgrading becomes a bit expensive, you're going to want to max out the ones that you've already been working on throughout the entire game. You'll clearly start to see the issue with this as you start fighting more bosses. Some of these spirits just don't have useful abilities. I'm not kidding, I didn't even read the description for some of the later ones that I got. I feel like this is becoming a strange trend nowadays, just give the player a lot more offensive options in combat. With complete disregard that the player may have already chosen some in the early game that they're going to use for the rest of the game. And even though some of the later ones are really good, most of the games have upgrade systems, so a player isn't going to stop using some of the ones they've invested so much time in just to use one that they got later on. I understand that you wanted to make every single enemy in the game be a mini-boss because they realistically are regular people who have been turned into monsters. But why not just have the regular bosses grant powers and have all the mini-bosses just grant upgrade materials? That would also go far into solving exploration because now the player has an incentive to fight these instead of just getting powers that they may not use. And that's mostly just what I want to say about the spirits, so let's talk about the relics next. The relics function a lot better than the spirits. It is honestly surprising because I found myself constantly swapping them out for different situations. Now that I think about it, I wonder if every single area could have had something like the mask that you get for the poison area. A relic that you would need in order to get through some sort of hazard that each level has. The catacombs could have had some sort of sharp armor that gets rid of the spider's web when they shoot you. The twin spires could have let you face through thicker floors. The castle could have given you your own shield. And I think this could have added to the strength of replayability and the depth of exploration while also providing a brand new challenge. Say that each level has its own set path that you need to follow. Once you beat the boss in that area, the relic which helped you get through it becomes permanent. However, any offshoots and secret paths could negate the relic's effects. These areas could also be where you could place the mini-bosses. And if you wanted another challenge in your next playthrough, you could just not use the relic and go through the entire game without it. You could also justify this in the lore by saying that each area was affected by the blight differently, which is why all of these relics are needed in order to get through them. Next, I want to talk about a point that may not be important to everyone, but I don't think this game needs contact damage. I don't really have much to say about it, I just don't think this game should have had contact damage. And the last thing I want to talk about is of course the bosses. I liked almost none of them because they all follow a similar trait of a regular sized person with fast attacks or a giant monster. I guess the only fights that I really liked were the ones against the Mad Knight in the second Guardian battle. As for the other fights, they really failed to be interesting. The second Guardian fight is just a better version of the first boss. My only problem is that both of these fights have basically the same third phase by turning into a giant monster. The Heavy Knight could seriously come back as a regular enemy if you wanted him to. The Witch is cool, but her summoning tornadoes and then flying on the opposite side of them was fucking cruel. The giant monster at the bottom of the map didn't move, yet somehow managed to have quick attacks. The battle with the Knight Captain is something I don't remember because he has such slow and predictable moves. A fight like this is where the game should have gotten a little bit faster. It's really strange to say this, but this game is impossibly slow. Now I get that you're playing as a child, but couldn't things move a little bit quicker? A boss like this should have really fast moves. He should be jumping around the arena and thrusting his spear into the ground from above. Speaking of jumping around, the battle that I hate the most is the one against the guy in the dungeon. This fight sucks because it has to summon other executioners to come and help him in the battle. There's like 4 or 5 of these dudes at once, and since they can all teleport around, you might accidentally dodge into one of them and take damage. And to make things worse, the boss himself has such simplistic moves that I wonder why he's a boss in the first place. It sucks that the executioners can all bundle up together and attack you at once. It sucks that he jumps around so much, and it really fucking sucks that the final boss had to copy this exact same idea. This final boss is clearly more on the presentation side, but summoning these flying enemies that can shoot fireballs that deal a shit ton of damage is just wrong. So yeah, this game might just have the weakest roster of bosses I've ever seen. I would take the third phase of the Mad Knight over all of these bosses any day. In fact, phase 3 of most of these fights are actually pretty good, but having to sit through the first 2 every single time you die is enough to make me not like them. So yeah, by the end of this, I may not be the most positive on Ender Lillies. I still like the game, but I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites of the year so far. It's surprising to know that my favorite thing about Ender Lillies isn't tied to combat or upgrades, the lore notes. I love the world building of this game, and I urge anyone who plays it to find all the lore notes so they can learn about it as well. Thanks for watching.